Cancer treatment is a constantly evolving field, with researchers and doctors seeking new treatments to more effectively fight cancer. As part of my project for the online 2020 CURES class, I will be outlining a new form of cancer treatment, known as targeted therapy. I wanted to make a learning tool that will be used to educate the public on targeted therapy and highlight the importance of research in developing new treatments for cancer. The following video is going to be a combination of an introduction to cancer and targeted therapy, and show an example of how targeted therapy can be used to treat cancer. Subsequent videos are going to be highlighting the use of targeted therapy in the treatment of other forms of cancer, as well as the limitations of targeted therapy. Accompanying this video, I will be sending out a survey on the project to ask what your thoughts are. I'm looking forward to your feedback on how effective the presentation was at explaining targeted therapy, its benefits and limitations. First, let's talk about what cancer is. So, cancer is caused by the uncontrolled growth and division of cells in your body. In normal situations, cell growth is actually good for the body. It's essential for us to grow and heal damage done to the body over time. But in cancer, the control of cell division is broken down. Cancer cells continuously divide and stick around long after they should. These cells will divide uncontrollably and can form large masses of cancer cells known as tumors. And there are two different types of tumors. There are benign tumors, which are tumors that stay in one spot and are typically non-life-threatening. But sometimes even a benign tumor can be serious in different situations. Malignant tumors are tumors that can break off from the original tumor. It can spread through the blood and lymph to other locations in the body. The medical term for this spread is called metastasis. So what causes cancer? At the cellular level, cancer starts from changes or mutations in the DNA of our cells. More specifically, in regions of the DNA called genes. Genes encode for and produce proteins. These proteins carry out jobs and functions that keep our cells healthy. But when genes mutate, this changes how these proteins are being made, and they start to function improperly. This can lead to unhealthy and out of control growth and division of our cells, which can cause cancer. So what makes cancer so difficult to treat? Well, there are a few big problems that come with cancer treatment. The first is that traditional forms of medicine don't work. We typically think of diseases as being caused by invaders that get into our body, like bacteria or viruses. These invaders are foreign, meaning that they are not normally a part of our body and are very different from our own cells. This means we can fight them with drugs and treatments that are harmful to them, but not to us. Cancer, however, is different. Cancer is a disease of the self. It comes from us. This makes it hard to form therapies that fight cancer cells, but do not harm our healthy cells too much in the process. A second problem that comes with treating cancer is that different cells in the body lead to different types of cancer. So, not all cancers are the same. There are many unique types of cells in the body, from the nerve cells in the brain to bone cells in the skeleton and everywhere in between. And cancer can arise from all these different types of cells. And just like the normal cells, each of these cancer types are unique with different genes and characteristics, meaning that they don't all respond to treatment the same way. To add even further difficulty, just like how everyone is unique, everyone's cancer is unique as well. Everyone has a different genetic code and a different life history. This means that even if two people have the same type of cancer, that doesn't mean that each person's cancer will be exactly the same and respond to treatment the same way. And so, with all this in mind, how do we go about treating cancer? Currently, the three most common ways to treat cancer are surgery, radiation therapy, and chemotherapy. These treatments have been effective at treating many different types of cancer, especially those caught early. However, there are cases where these therapies are not enough to treat some forms of cancer, and prolonged use of some of these treatments can have side effects. Radiation and chemotherapy have been very effective in fighting cancer, but in order to treat cancer cells in the body, sometimes healthy cells get damaged in the process. So scientists and researchers are working hard to find new treatments and ways to fight cancer, one of those being targeted therapy. Targeted therapy tries to use the unique properties of different cancer cell types to create drugs and other medications to treat cancer. Targeted therapy starts with research into what makes certain types of cancer unique. For example, what makes breast cancer unique and different from colon cancer? We start by collecting tissue samples from patients who all have a common type of cancer. We can use these tissue samples to try to find out what unique gene mutations and traits cause these types of cancers to form. Once we figure out those properties, we can then design drugs and other treatments that directly target those unique traits of the cancer cells. Let's take a look at how we can apply targeted therapy to breast cancer. Breasts in humans contain mammary glands, which produce and secrete milk to feed infants. Breast cancer typically starts in the ducts that carry milk to the nipples or in the glands that make breast milk. Breast cancer is the most common form of cancer in women and has been studied extensively. Common causes of the disease and its genetic mutations are well known, which makes it a good candidate for targeted therapy. So let's take a look at the causes of breast cancer and how it has helped us make targeted therapies to treat the disease. Researchers have discovered that hormones like estrogen play a big role in breast cell growth and division. These hormones bind to receptors on the surface of breast cells and tell the cell to grow and divide. Due to mutations in the genes in breast cancer cells, many forms of breast cancer have an unusually high amount of these receptors on the surface. This means that more hormones can bind to these receptors and cause cells to grow and divide much faster than normal breast cells. Scientists have found that not all breast cancer patients are the same. There isn't just one hormone and receptor that can cause breast cancer cell growth and division, but a variety of different hormones and receptors that can vary from patient to patient. So, we can have different patients, all with breast cancer, but with different hormones and receptors causing it in each individual. Now, how does this research help with treating breast cancer? Since we know that when hormones bind to these receptors, it causes breast cancer cells to grow and divide, if we could stop this binding, it would help stop breast cancer cells from growing and dividing. And so we have developed targeted therapy drugs that will block hormones from binding to the receptors, and this has shown great outcomes for patients with certain types of breast cancer. So now that we have developed these targeted therapy drugs, how do we go about administering them to different patients? Like I mentioned before, not everyone is going to have the same type of breast cancer. Breast cancer patients are going to have different hormones and receptors that could be contributing to their form of breast cancer. And so before we administer a targeted therapy drug, we're going to take a tissue sample from patients to determine which hormones and receptors are playing a role in their type of breast cancer. Then, once we know what type of hormones and receptors are playing a role, we can give them a targeted therapy drug that is designed specifically to prevent the binding of hormones and receptors for that patient's breast cancer. And this can help stop breast cancer cell growth and division. And targeted therapy for breast cancer has shown some really promising results. One of the earlier clinical trials for targeted therapy was for a drug called TAM. In the clinical trial, patients who were given chemotherapy alone had a 5-year survival rate of 83%, which is already really good. But for patients who are given both chemotherapy and TAM, the 5-year survival rate increased to 91%. That is an 8% increase. While targeted therapy is effective in treating many forms of breast cancer, it's not perfect. There are some types of breast cancer, such as triple-negative breast cancer, that does not seem to respond at all to these targeted therapy treatments. This is because triple-negative breast cancer's cell growth and division does not seem to be reliant on hormones like estrogen, but is instead caused by some other source. So there's still more work to be done on breast cancer treatment in order to fight these forms of breast cancer. Thank you for listening to my presentation. This was a brief overview of my project, and in future videos, I want to highlight how targeted therapy can be used for other forms of cancer as well, and some of the limitations of targeted therapy. I will be sending out a survey soon, and I would love to hear your feedback on my presentation, project, and anything I could improve on. Thank you.